we are enough multi-brained these days that we can do that. And a third bit of this kind of thread about how we can do this communication is that you've got this document that looks something like, actually, let me start off with this one here. Yeah, that's not it. I got too many into this one. We've got this, this is just a little picture that we can put up in front of us here if we don't want to look at each other, although I think we are the most interesting things here is each other. What we want to do is we want to take a, just look at some of the kinds of things that have gone with our online modeling of physics and how that has gone. And it'd be interesting, very interesting to hear how things have been going for you all. And a reminder of these conversation guidelines, share airtime equitably. That's where I need to end my talking soon. And then please, feel to chime in a variety of ways, whether it's through the chat or whatever. These are the kinds of questions we're gonna focus on. What has gone best for you during this time? What surprised you during this time? And what supports do you need to feel more confident about the fall? So we'll take a look at those. In addition to this shared screen, we also have this kind of note screen. And if we could get some let me just switch to this. I have so many screens. I thought I closed out most of them too. Here it is. So this is the thing that's also linked in those materials for today. And it's just a place that we could take notes. You could also type some of your comments directly into here as well, as just a helpful way of recording some of the, what's gone well, what are the kinds of needs. All right, so I am not the runner of things here, really. Also Michael Dolan and Holly McTurnan. And so we as a crew are all here to join in on this and get a chance to hear about how things have been going. Holly, would you like to give it a shot here and talk a little bit about how things have been going for you?
Not enough USB ports. Yeah, I wasn't expecting. I thought we were just helping to help everybody have a conversation, but certainly got thrown in the deep end right away, even before the remote teaching with the DL course with the AMTA E&M, and I was really grateful for that. And I know Sean is on this call also. He was in that class, and I know a lot of us in that class talked about how helpful it was to be in a remote class, a virtual class, using Zoom, using Google, using all of these tools and learning how to manage things and try to keep modeling going, try to keep the conversations going, the whiteboarding sessions, figuring out all different ways to whiteboard. I will say that has grown for me tremendously. And a big part of that is thanks to, many thanks to a group of people from a past class that just keep chatting and sharing chats. And so, you'll get this random chat saying, hey, has anybody figured out a better way to do? And so, that has expanded to using Google Slides and Google Drawings within Google Docs. And so that's something we're testing out in our class now. And Class Kick is something that we've been testing out, just trying to figure out how do we get the collaborative experience of whiteboarding where everybody in the room can see what everybody else is doing and everybody can draw at the same time. And that is such a challenge. We're finding, either one person can only see what they're doing, or one group can maybe talk to each other and one person can write, or we talk and we think we know what's going to be on there, and then all of a sudden the copy paste happens and oh my gosh, we didn't all think the same thing. So that has been obviously a challenge. And I have some templates that we've created for our class that we're doing for ASU E&M this summer. If anybody wants those, I can pop those into, I guess I could pop those onto the document. And then just, I don't know, I feel like I'm floundering here a little bit in terms of, I feel bad. I didn't realize I should be prepared this way. But then in my own experience, just trying to figure out how can I have my students do experiments and continue to do experiments and continue to do data. Thank you, Brian. So I did find, I got lucky we hadn't done the pendulum. So that was something that I could, tell my students at home, all right, here's what you're going to do. These are the materials you need. This is how you're going to run this. And then, a whole series of experiments that were back and forth all the way to a final video where they gave me an upload. Was it as perfect as it would have been in the classroom? No, but I felt like it was really, really a good use of data analysis, and then different levels of students, my honors level being able to do analysis very differently from my regular students. And then the last thing I'll say before I'm sure that lots of people have stuff to share, is that I feel for myself personally that the silver lining to all of this was that I was forced to learn new things that my perfectionism or my fear of being in a camera or my fear of, doing and in the middle of a video stopped me from doing. For years, I've thought, oh, I want to do more videos for my students for when they miss class or for when they just want to see it again or hear it again, or I want to do screencasts. I want to do that. And I would do one and it would take forever because I was such a perfectionist. And I'm sure you were the same. All of a sudden, I'm having to crank out like 6 or 7 of those in one day. And it took away all the fear and all of the, sort of personal, oh, I can't do that. So that was a great thing for me. Not to take away from the horror that this was for many people, Mark and people who were in areas like his, certainly got the horrible experience.
Thanks. Thanks, Holly. I noticed in the chat box, this is Kelly. I noticed in the chat box that there's a question about, did anyone have success with asynchronous discussions here? And a couple people echoed that. So if anyone can weigh in, I think that might be helpful.
Brenda, would you expand on what you just typed in about using Flipgrid?
Yeah, so we had planned a Socratic seminar for April and kind of brainstormed around other ways to get kids using their voice, like expressing their learning in spoken form. And so Flipgrid allows each kid to record a short video of themselves and post it. And then, so we prompted them to do that. And then as a second prompt, they had to listen to someone else's video and respond to it. And it worked okay. We didn't have a lot of engagement just because I think part of our situation was the do no harm grading policy meant that engagement and willingness to participate kind of wasn't stable. And it worked okay though. It was really cool to see the kids' face. And we made the video, the face optional. I think Flipgrid will sometimes put like an emoji over their face too. And we got a few kids responding and we provided sentence frames and whatever scaffolds made sense in that time. And it's something I'd be interested in trying again, maybe with a little bit more lead up into it, because I think it was I'm sure a lot of kids were shy or weren't sure. I wonder about an opportunity to get feedback from kids about what they thought of it, but I do recommend Flipgrid as a tool to get kids not only speaking, but listening to each other talk asynchronously.
Some of the other comments here are about just using whiteboards as facilitating discussion, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. So some of the tools, and I've tried to use too, is to use Google Slides. Some other people have used Google Jamboard. Could anybody speak to their experience using any of those tools that you thought?
I can speak to using Google Jamboard. I primarily had synchronous classes, though the Jamboard might work for asynchronous. Jamboard is Google's collaborative whiteboarding software that should be available through Google Suites for Education. Basically, you create different frames, almost like slides. They call them frames. I think of them as individual whiteboards. And I would use Jamboard in combination with Zoom. I'd break my classes up into different, we'd be all together. I'd break them into breakout sessions and assign them to different frames to collaboratively write on the Jamboard, force diagrams, things like that to solve problems. And then we'd come back together as a group after their breakout sessions and look at each frame individually. It's shared just like you share anything in Google. Everything is saved to your Google Drive, and it was a very intuitive and easy way to work. A lot of the students want to get creative. I'd even allow them to have like a separate slide where they would do little art projects and stuff, kind of getting into that collaborative spirit of, oh, this is what this can do, so they can learn how the different pens work and all that sort of thing. It was very easy to use, and I think very successful. It was just like having whiteboard sessions in class. You can also put sticky notes that allow you to, I would have the groups write their names on sticky notes that they would put up in the corners to keep track of which groups did what problems and that sort of thing.
Did you have any issue with the fact that there's the erase screen button is like right there at the top and one click and it's gone?
So luckily, so in my particular classes, I did not have problems with, I guess, disinterested or problematic students doing that sort of thing. That would be a concern. Once we were all done, one of the things I did is because we would just share the same Jamboard the entire time. So like a particular class, we'd share the Jamboard. You do have the capability of saving either those frames out as JPEGs or saving the entire Jamboard out as a PDF. And so at the end of class, I would save that out as a PDF and then store that along with our recorded Zoom session for students to view afterwards and that sort of thing. But yeah, you're correct. There really wouldn't be anything necessarily to stop somebody going in and wiping everything out. But part of that's sort of that I thought of as, we talked about that ahead of time, as part of the etiquette and protocol. You know, in my regular classroom, there's nothing really to keep a student from walking over to another group and erasing their stuff. And I'm like, you know, just don't be an ass, right? So.
Going back to a comment that Elizabeth England made, can you tell us about the Pear Deck add-on to Google Slides?
Sure. Our district this year got Pear Deck, and we convinced them next year that we should have it again. It's really cool. It's an add-on with Google Slides. You can go into Google Slides and download the app, and it makes it much more interactive so that you can stop and there'll be discussion questions, there'll be quizzes. They can doodle. They can make a doodle about different things and draw. I used it a lot for force diagrams, and had them draw different force diagrams and then try to trick each other with force diagrams. And I just found it, and you can use it asynchronously, so you can assign a slideshow that you want them to go through, and then you'll know if they've done it, or you can use it synchronously as a group going together to do it. I found it very helpful for one of my classes because I had so many kids who would pop their faces up and then I'd never hear from them again. And so it's a way to immediately know if they're there, because probably every 2 slides I'd put a slide in where they had to discuss something that we'd just talked about. and I really liked it. And it's a little pricey, but a lot of districts I know are getting the federal funds, and so that's how we tapped into getting them to buy it next year. Right now it is free, so you could go on and try Pear Deck for nothing.
Great. Mackenzie, would you talk to us a little bit about how you're structuring your Flipgrid sessions?
Sure. So I used Flipgrid just because it was super easy. I had never used it in my classes, but it was just really user-friendly, kind of similar to Snapchat. And so I found my students could like easily maneuver it. And so I would use Flipgrid very similar to what I would do in my classroom to whiteboard. I would call out groups of students and say, you know, you're going to whiteboard velocity with respect to radius, like your graph, and, you know, go through the typical whiteboard presentation, whereas another group will do velocity with respect to force, because we fortunately just finished our data collection for the circular motion paradigm lab right before we went on shutdown. And so I got a variety of things from students. They can share their screen on Flipgrid. They can also pre-record a video and upload it to Flipgrid. So some students would, you know, share their version of graphical analysis and explain their graph that way. Others would draw a rough sketch either on a Google Doc or on a simple piece of paper and hold it up and explain that way. But I loved that, you know, all students could share their own, make their own however they wanted, and then they could view other students' whiteboard presentations and respond as well. And so for me, I was just really pleasantly surprised with that platform, able to online simulate whiteboarding as best as possible.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Michael, would you tell us a little bit about a web whiteboard and how that worked? I clicked on the thing of, I don't know, a month ago, but I never actually installed it and started using it.
Mark, you're asking about Parlay?
I was wondering about a web whiteboard, that particular tool, but you can talk about whatever you'd like.
Yeah, no, that whiteboard I think is really cool because it's easy to get all the students signed simultaneously onto the same whiteboard. And you can also import your own documents and then draw over them. So, you know, it really, to me, was, and it's free. It's one of those tools that kind of looked a lot like a classroom. You're doing it. AWW is the name of the app.
Some of these are great. One of the issues that I've had is just some organic way for kids to actually draw into this, because if they're trying to draw with their mouse or their, you know, slide around on their trackpad, it's really hard. Have anybody found nicer solutions for that aspect of things?
If you have an iPad, you can connect it to your laptop, which is what I did. It becomes very easy. But yeah, if you're trying to, anytime you're trying to draw with a mouse on a whiteboard, it's difficult.
Dan's just bringing up a question too, just about equity of access. I mean, I've been lucky enough that all of my students are well equipped with, you know, the tools they need, but, you know, a lot of students have issues with reliable internet connections. They don't have laptops. I have a physics cat, by the way. That's who just came and joined us here right now. How have you been handling the equity of access to things?
I mean, I just want to say, like, for me, I teach in Chicago public schools. And so there was I had a bunch of students that weren't engaged at all for the first 2 to 6 weeks that we were remote because they just didn't have devices. And my school did a good job of just dumping all of the material, just emptying all of the Chromebook carts and stuff like that to get devices to students. but it's challenging because they don't have touch screens. So like drawing with that is hard. I also noticed that none of them wanted to show their faces in any form of discussion. So I thought that was I don't know if anybody had any of those issues. I wasn't as engaged during this time period as possible because I had some family health issues that I was dealing with. So I actually took advantage of being remote and flew to Florida to help out with my parents for like a month. So I feel like a lot of the things that I was like just always playing catch up, trying to figure out that kind of stuff. The phone, I see someone commented that the phone could be a good touchscreen, and it does work well, but the issue that I found with a lot of stuff was it was just too small of a screen for kids to see well. So yeah, I'm looking for ideas in terms of like how to make it so that they could see better as well. Does anyone know if smart TVs have apps that you could easily just share with the phone screen? Just popped in my head.
I think they mirror up to the screen, but I don't know that it is on your phone screen and the TV at the same time, so you could like use it as a touchpad or a mouse type thing.
I've had some students that, because the phone's too small, they might write their answer down or what they think's going on paper, capture a screen capture of that, and then they upload that picture to the Jamboard, and other people comment or annotate it and make notes that way.
Yeah, I think that's really the hard part right now with different kids with access technology, or even, you know, if the district gives out laptops to them so they have a device at home, you know, who knows that they have a Wi-Fi strong enough to deal with everything. I know my neighbor lives behind me, has 4 young boys in school. They had an iPad, that they don't even have a computer at home. They got 3 computers, but you know, this idea that everyone's going to be able to join and do a Zoom meeting or some sort of synchronous thing is probably not going to be the reality. And my biggest concern, I think, that looking forward to the fall is, you know, we went to this asynchronous mode of learning, or this kind of crisis mode, already having established a class culture, and you know, my kids trusted each other and would talk to each other. And I have this situation of, you know, my freshmen are going to come in from 8 different junior highs that are coming into my building next year that are not going to know each other and not going to trust. And how do we get that conversation going and that collaborative nature going with kids that don't know each other and don't trust each other yet?
People have got all kinds of good things say here in the chat here, and I don't need to be the bottleneck for everything to go through. So other people feel free to, like Will's question about how have you been handling experiments at home? What kinds of things have you been able to do?
The other physics teacher I work with and we ended up favoring topics that we could do with video analysis for doing distance learning. And so like we did the graphs for projectile motion. And so kids could go, everybody had something they could throw, and pretty much every kid had a device capable of recording video, even if it was just their phone. And then we used the Vernier video analysis app for them to get graphs. We spent a lot of time on graphs for simple harmonic motion as well. So kids were able to find strings or shoelaces or something similar that they could use to set up a really basic pendulum, again, record some video, do some video analysis. So that's how we had kids doing some experiments at home.
I can just share something too, a resource that Aaron, I think if you can post a link maybe in the chat, but Aaron, who's on this call, has been working on videotaping some of the typical modeling paradigm labs and then creating them as YouTube videos. So I'm in a school where I'm teaching right now in the high income area. We can easily afford pivot, and that's likely something that I'll be looking at. But he's been working on having videos where students could do a form of video analysis, but just by watching a YouTube video, pausing it, and looking at the time signature on a time listed on the video, and then also like the location of an object. So my hope or my thought, if we are either full-time online or at least partially online in the fall, is to have, I think to try to prioritize our synchronous time if students are able to be synchronous at sometimes with sense making, and then to try to create opportunities for the, like in this case, analyzing these videos would be something they would do in groups of 3 or 4 on their own. And we'd have ways for provide a few different options for them to communicate with each other and kind of prepare their work. And then we'd have a shorter period where we're having our post-lab discussion or the sense-making discussion. And Aaron just posted those in the chat. I'm sure he could speak to them too, but it's something he's been working.
I have something quick that I wanted to share. I did a distance learning class for Intro to Modeling. And I just wanted to show you something that we did that helped with, unfortunately not, or I forget, asynchronous or not. This would be like live. So what we did was for LOL charts, they were very hard to draw. And so Nathan Harada created this template so that you could just really just drag and drop things. You could do this with force diagrams if you wanted to, where you just had kind of the things that were hard to draw. And then what we did is we had our students put them into one slide that was in 6 sections, and then you can press present and it gets really nice and big. If this will happen here, and then you can have your whiteboard discussion live like that where they can see all of their boards. So I just thought I would share that from our distance learning modeling class, that these are things we have spent some time thinking about since we did distance learning for 2 years.
Yeah, I really like how that smooths out or speeds up that animation process so that the kids can represent the key things that are different and have the kind of template there for what's the same. That's fantastic.
Sorry, if I could just say something, Mark. I noticed in the chat somebody said, how can we save the chat? And so I just wanted to mention for everybody, if you go, so if you click on chat, the chat window will open. And if you go to the place where you would type in chat, you'll see 3 dots. And in the 3 dots, there's a place to say save chat. And so you can just go ahead and do that for yourself at the end of the meeting or whenever you feel like you want to do that, if that helps, hopefully.
I just want to jump in and add that if you have something that's useful, it's also the document to post into the document. The Google Doc is a great way to do that. And if you see somebody write something that's useful, you could put it into the Google Doc as well. I also was just thinking about looking at how those slide pieces were created. It reminds me of the Smart Notebook. The Smart, that software was set up so that you could create infinite copies. So like you could, so I don't know if there's a way to, like actively share that. So, if you're in a session and something like that, because that software I think was kind of free. I don't remember. But I had a smart board many years ago.
I think I remember some people saying that there's schools that had that software were using this. I don't know, is that the case from anybody here?
Well, I don't have a smart board, but our school does. And so I got the smart board app. And that's how when I screen shared with my students, I would be drawing and writing on that. There is a little bit of a lag, but they were able to get all of the things. And you can prep multiple pages on that so that if you're going to have a discussion on simple harmonic motion, you can go in and cut and paste things in so that it's a little more easy. So you're not drawing everything out. You're like, here's a diagram. We're going to draw the forest pictures on here. Here's this. You're doing more of the discussion than they are. But because it's, when I did it, we had everything synchronous on that part. We filmed everything, we did all of that. But I asked my students questions throughout and then gave them a minute or so to respond in chat. And that's how I told them I was taking roll, that if I never saw them answer a question, they wouldn't get credit for showing up. But we used chat to have them answer questions too.
Every teacher at our site was given a pen to work with their district given laptops, which work as a tablet. I've mostly used it with OneNote, and I was just wondering if other folks have had experiences with a different program or app that works well with the stylus pen for similar, like what we might do in the classroom.
I have a legacy version of Explain Everything, which is a really great app for making videos and stuff, because you can sort of, as Lynn had said about putting in, you can preload what you're going to talk about and you can write on it. Explain Everything has a newer version. So I'm using Explain Everything EDU, which is the legacy, which is iPad only, but the new version works on basically everything. I think there's even a Kindle. It'll run on Kindle, like the Kindle Fire. And it's a massive whiteboarding app. People can work concurrently on it. And the one thing I like about it for making videos is as you go from one page to the next page, it treats the audio on each page individually, so that if you're making a video where you're explaining something and you mess up on that, like on page 5, you just can back up on page 5 a little bit and restart with where you are. And it records the writing too, and then you can output that as a regular video. So that works really well if you have a stylus.
Tell us about your Apple Pencil experiences. Several people have commented on that.
Okay, I'll go. I guess, can you hear me? I'm on my AirPods. You can hear? Yes, okay. So I got an iPad and an Apple Pencil for Christmas, and it turned out to be really great because it's so much easier than, I have like a bamboo tablet, and I feel like the Apple Pencil iPad combo, if you can make that work, is like amazing. It's so much easier to write with everything on Notability. I just made the screencast like right on the iPad, and it was super, super easy. And then the other thing I wanted to plug that I just found out about was ClassKick. I don't know if you guys use that at all, but I'm not usually one for like, oh, there's this new tech tool that's going to be amazing, but this is like, I think it's life-changing. So you put, I guess it's kind of like Pear Deck and stuff, although I've never used that. But what I really love about ClassKick is we're sort of creating like a Google slide deck of what we want them to do. And we put every link in there, every video, every answer key, there's audio buttons, so that everything's in one place for the kids. But then the thing about ClassKick that's amazing is I can look at their slides, and I like say the slide where they're taking data. I just used this in summer camp this week with like 5th and 6th graders, and they were working through the PhET sim, and I could watch them typing in the data. And I can literally, like on either my computer or my iPad, I can go like click, 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 and I can see the next kid's work like that fast. And you can add little stickers, and I could write a note, or I could circle something, like they're trying to write the relationship, and I can be like, no, try again. And I can just click through each kid's work and see it like super fast. And it was amazing. I can't wait to use it next year.
I have a quick request because all this stuff sounds amazing, but I can't quite follow a lot of it just because you can't see it. In the notes, I was wondering for anybody who shared an idea like Flipgrid or what was just talked about, if you could make a screencast of yourself using it and showing us the things that you click on and why it's so great and put it in the notes, I would be forever grateful.
I'm going to add, if I can, just to Kim's points about the ClassKick, that if you want to do it synchronously, and you want 6 people to land on one slide, there is a workaround for that, and that is that you create a class roster that is set up in groups. And so group 1, group 2, group 3, and then the kids sign in with the username group 1, and they land together in the same place, and you can see them working and they can collaborate with each other at the same time, which is nice to know because you have to search out that, it took me a while to find it when I was trying to find out about ClassKick myself.
So our conversation has got deep into the tech tools, which is part of the conversation for tomorrow, is just kind of some of these kinds of things. So maybe what we do is we do a little bit of following up on sharing some of the things that we've talked about. But it'd be also nice to just talk about, and I get the sense from what people have been saying about how they've tried to build interactivity, about how we've tried to maintain a modeling philosophy, a modeling classroom in this new environment. And so beyond the tech tools, what are some of the things that you've found that have been really critical that still makes you feel like you're a modeler and you're not just showing another slideshow or something and hoping the kids figure it out?
I have to say, and this was a lot of work, I couldn't figure out any other way because I was asynchronous. I could not have live time with my students. The only thing that that worked for me is just calling every student up and having a conversation about like we did Google Chats about their work, and the kids had to ask questions. Like I would take screenshots of their work one day and put it in a Google Doc, and then they would have to ask a question based on the differences, you know, just like the discussion, and then they'd have to comment. But even through those discussions, it was really hard if you're not seeing them one-on-one. And so the only way I could really feel like I was still modeling and still teaching was to call every single student and just talk to them about what was going on.
I've had some ideas since everything kind of ended because I've had the mental space to think about it. And so a little bit of like, in terms of like adding some asynchronicity to it, would also, I was thinking about sending them each other's work to correct. And either they would have to explain why this person's work is correct or why this person's work needs to be changed and what the change needs to be. I haven't quite wrapped my head around like a good system for doing that. That is somewhat manageable. Like as I think about it, I think about using like Doctopus to push out different versions to different kids so they don't all have the same stuff. But I think that's the biggest challenge, is like, how do you, having that and dealing with students that are sharing devices and can't be synchronously with everybody else, or I think about even small groups and trying to schedule small groups at different times, but I'll have like 150 kids. So I just don't like, I'm just curious if, even if people haven't done it, what are some of your ideas of things to try for next year?
I can speak to the small groups. Actually, I did that for my classes. And the small group meetings that I had were just really short. So I would have maybe 6 students in a meeting, but it would only be 20 minutes long. And I did feel like it gave me a chance to check in with them more individually and talk to every student and really listen to them. And it was short, but it was manageable for my time.
There was a couple of comments about just thinking about the content we teach. And I mean, I wasn't able to do electric circuits this year. I mean, it just, you know, I wasn't able to do as much stuff. And thinking about what is core and what's key to what we're doing. Another question was about assessment. And a lot of the things that we do every day in our assessment kind of need to be rethought too. And so that kind of one person does one quiz maybe isn't the best model for everything. And collaborative assessments that are sophisticated enough that using online resources is perfectly fair game. There's a variety of things like that. So what kinds of things did you have to cut, or what are you thinking about, might having to do to streamline next year? So that's one question. And then what kinds of things have you been thinking about assessment-wise?
I'll go ahead, I guess. I mean, one of the things that I'm thinking about or trying to figure out for next year is how to keep track of where students are sort of on an individual basis. I mean, we've been making our school's trying to make, or some individuals are trying to make the transition over to more of a sort of standards-based methodology where we're keeping track of where the students are. But so, for example, like the end of last year, typically I teach both an introductory physics course, and then that slides into an AP physics course later on. Well, at the end of last year, the kids didn't get nearly through. I dropped that whole last unit. So how do I know where they are, and how do I get them up to speed while continuing on with students that were able to do the whole course earlier? And so the only way I can think about doing that is a more sort of standards-based thing where I can kind of see where they've mastered certain concepts on a continuum and pick up where we left off. A lot of pre-testing and post-testing kind of things.
Something I tried for assessment, just not a required thing, but I asked specific students just to try it out, but was to use Flipgrid as the way of assessing. And so I gave like a 3-question quiz or assessment of sorts that involved doing some math, doing some explaining, and also drawing ray diagrams in this case. And so they would basically prepare their work ahead of time and then take a video of them explaining it. And so I think at least with Flipgrid, you can set a specific time. So you would say, in my case, I give them 90 seconds to explain the thing, and they can do it as much as they want. And so to a large extent, it's a different type of assessment than an on-demand, because you have access to a bunch of resources. In a sense, it's a learning experience and an assessment of sorts together.
Can we just have a time check? What time are we done? Is it 11:15? I think I'm reading the schedule right.
Good question, Lee. I was thinking it was a 1-hour session, but we should double check that. That's a good point. But keep talking physics in the meantime while we're checking.
Yes, there's a break from 11:15 to 11:30. Next sessions start at 11:30.
Thank you.
Oh, on assessments. Oh.
All right.
But Holly, Arizona time is the only time, so I didn't want to translate.
That's great. So that means we're out of time, right? Okay. No, we're not. What is
That was a West Coast time, I think.
Yeah, Eastern time. The next session starts at 2:30, so we're done at 2:15, I think.
Yeah, we still have like 45 minutes. We still have 45 minutes.
Half an hour is what I see.
Half an hour, 45 minutes.
All right. So we can really keep working this thing.
Just a quick suggestion.
One of the things that I'm...
Go ahead, Lee.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you have the agenda, make a copy of it, and then you can delete all the other time zones but yours, and make it wider. I could not read the times on that one, so I made a copy, and now I can read it much clearer.
I would love to keep talking about assessments. And so I've tried a lot of collaborative assessments, and I keep coming back to this, I'm still grading them on the content piece. And I guess I'm trying to figure out how do other people approach that? I can imagine, an environment where I use, a group of 4 students gets together over Zoom, and together they do something and video record it. But then how do I look at it? That'll help me so much to understand where they're at. But how do I actually assess that? That feels weird, and I need help.
Julia, I was thinking about also having the students score each other on their own group work. and score themselves, and also give them a grade. You could grade them actually on their own accuracy to try to get some truth. So like it gets tricky, but I've successfully done this once. It's blown up in my face more times than I've done it well. But what I did was, it was like, I felt, grade people for like the amount of time, like to have them do that and say like, oh, this person spent, shared with other people or that kind of thing. This person participated, didn't, that kind of thing. And then have them rate themselves. And then you can look at the scores as they come in. And if a kid, they could get a good, like they can score well for assessing themselves appropriately. Because I think there's like a metacognitive piece to that too, of like working in a team, but kids can easily gain that system. So it's not as, but it gets, the kid that never does anything, that shows that system works pretty well in terms of like who's working. But I'm kind of in the same boat with you.
Yeah, so I have my students do video projects, and they're kind of resistant at first, but there's all kinds of rubrics for doing it. You can have them present some kind of intermediate product, like a storyboard, and have them produce something that shows that they're organized and engaged. You can assess them on whether or not they got math, whether or not they got multiple representations, whether or not they looked something up online in the physics teacher and put it up kind of like a card at the end. And there's actually a paper on this in the April edition of the physics teacher on video projects. And if you just search my name and video, there's websites that talk about doing it. And of course, they're all obsolete. We don't do it that way anymore, but it'll certainly start you off and give you things you can grade for project-based learning with intermediate artifacts.
The closest I came to normal assessments, so I want to go back to the point of like tracking individuals, and like instead of having everything be collaborative. One thing, we literally like just had them, I emailed them a quiz at the beginning of class, and then I'd have their video on and would take the normal quiz so that I could see they were working and not collaborating, and like emphasize honor code. And a slightly normal, but still slightly collaborative, but also slightly individual strategy I tried was I would email them quiz at the beginning of class. Of the like hour of class that they had, the first 10 minutes they had to work individually on paper. And then for the remaining time, I put them in random breakout rooms for like a certain amount of time, and then jumbled up the rooms after a beforehand decided amount of time so that they got to like talk to each other about their answers. And then they had to take a picture and upload it, similar to like what AP ended up doing. And the key with like making sure they have time to work individually at the beginning is to make sure everyone has time to get their answers down and one person doesn't dominate all the discussion, because that is very easy to happen. And then no extra time was the one tricky thing for anyone with an IEP. But the questions were, it was a bit of an experiment, so the questions were a little easier, but that was one way that I was able to use like questions I would have given in person for a test or quiz and still give them a sense of normalcy for the kind of questions and format of questions that I would have given them otherwise.
Just to build off that a little bit, I didn't do this last year, but what Katie just said reminded me. I know some testing strategies where you have essentially you give a quiz in half the period of time that you want to, and that's their individual score. They turn it in, and then the second half they take the same quiz but as a group, and you find some way to combine that. You do the accounting problem, figure out how much you want to weight each piece. But that may be a good middle ground for those of you trying to find a way to do individual assessment and kind of taking the pressure away from the kids and letting them have a second shot at it with the group. Like I know somebody who really, if they do better on the group than the individual, I don't know if that completely replaces it or if they do some strange grading calculus, but for the people that do that, they really stand by it.
And I'd also like to shout out for the individual stuff, even though it's not like normal assessments for labs. Physics aviary was really great because each kid gets randomized numbers for whatever lab it is. So it like has to be individual. And then asking a lot of questions so that they basically have to type up words, and that's been super great.
One thing that I did is, because 2 weeks before the end of the semester, our district said we're going to do no final exams, which was like, really? Okay. So what I did is I flipped it on its end, and I had the students had to write a physics final exam for me. So they had to make a physics final exam, and then they had to send it to me, and then I did it, and then they had to grade it so I could see, did they get the content? Did they and they had to have essay questions, and it was really successful for some of the kids. Some kids are like, Miss England, this is too hard. And I'm like, I do this all the time. And then another thing I did, I did a lot of group work distantly, and I had them grade each other, and honestly grade each other. And you couldn't just we're also competency based. Oh yeah, I did get things wrong because I did on purpose to see how they were checking it and not giving me just 100. But you couldn't we're competency based, so we are 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 4. We have no 3s. So they couldn't just give someone a 4 without putting justification behind it, and they lost points on their grade if they didn't justify someone else's grades better. So. And I did the final with make your own final in every single class I taught. And I taught an integrated science class, and I taught an astronomy class, and they all liked it. But they complained it was a lot of work.
Assessment can be informal as well. So I mean, there's a lot of things where it's like, show me your homework, hold it up to the camera. And so it was that real quick feedback about, just who's paying attention, who's involved in the class. We were doing stuff with universal gravitation, which involves all the crazy calculator work. And for my 9th graders, they're trying to work out scientific notation. It's like, hold up your calculator. Oh, hold your calculator 90 degrees. A lot of the screens are polarized and you can't see it unless they turn things. Those little check-ins were really helpful just to kind of see how kids were doing. And then just to give a little punctuation or a break to, our period as we're shifting from a group session to breakout sessions back to the group. As I'd use Kahoot as well as just a way of just saying, are you guys here? Are you paying attention? And I mean, it's just kind of fun and goofy, but it's another way that none of that may necessarily factor into a grade, but it does give you a really good sense of who's doing okay and who's having a hard time in this environment, and may need to have a little intervention. I also did the stuff that with like individual assessments. I sent each kid their own individual question, or I'd used Google Sheets to randomize some of the inputs. But I always left out a piece, and I said, well, for this, you need a mass, so pick a relevant mass. And it made each question different enough that if the kids wanted to collaborate, I mean, I discouraged them from, but if they did, the only way they could do it is by exchanging information about the process. It wasn't ever about the numbers. And then in my spreadsheet, I could just type in whatever mass the value they chose, and I would have a value then I would expect them to come up with. And it always had a component of drawing something as well as solving something and explaining something.
My first assignment for them online was basically kind of a check-in thing. And I think we often think about starting the year with sort of the intro lab, and or other pieces like that. How do you graph? How do you, we often talk about getting kids used to doing physics. And I think we really need to think about in the fall, in order to maintain equity, do an assessment of students' ability to use the technology, whatever platform we're using. Because as we all know, people like to say, oh, you know, those, if you have a question about tech, ask a teenager. But a whole lot of them really don't know how to use it, right? And so I think building that in as first thing in the year, let's make sure you know how to use the tools here and you're going to be graded on this. And that would be like, okay, it can take you 6 times and you're going to get an A on it, but you really have to demonstrate to me that you know how to use the tools we're going to use this year.
One quick little thing that I used for individual formative assessment for my students this last year. My context, most of everything I did in the last couple of months was asynchronous. And I was also teaching AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2. And so a lot of what I did was review. It wasn't new content. And so one thing I did was interactive video quizzes. And so we use Canvas for our classroom management software, but I think there's other things like Edpuzzle or other ways to do interactive videos. And I use multiple choice questions, true and false questions, so that students can get instantaneous feedback about their understanding. And it was just a quick little way for me to check in with their basic understanding. So yeah, something my students enjoyed, and it's just something that kind of kept them engaged a little bit with some of the review videos or even content videos that we did, so I could find out how much they understand.
Has anyone toyed with giving, like, preloading stuff with students and just having them try to like lead the content or the activity or something like that? I've always thought about, like, instead of me doing it, particularly once we get later into the year, having some students that, like, either possibly students that have been struggling, so I could work with them more closely and then have them run it. That's something I haven't really done yet, because I've been trying to figure out how do the time management piece of that, because it's like that means they either have to come before school or after school or something like that. But I always thought that would be an interesting thing, because that would free me completely to just sort of focus in on a few other kids. So I don't know if something like that would work in this kind of setup digitally.
I do hope everybody's keeping up with the chat, because it's been a very productive, robust discussion here, and it's been great. I think too, as you go back and you look through this, oh, thanks, Elizabeth. You're going to find references to things, and you're going to say, yeah, Canvas, all these kinds of things. How can I go back and find out more? And that, I think, would be something that you don't need people's individual email addresses. You can actually just send that out to the modeling listserv, because everybody's going to benefit from answers and explanations about these items. So LMS, that's a learning management system. So some people have been using, you know, a lot of schools have their own proprietary systems. Some of my colleagues were going rogue and using Google Classroom, just because it has such a much better system for dealing with students turning in materials to you, your ability to notate it, and then to return it. Can someone that's used Google Classroom speak to how well giving student feedback in that form worked?
I can say we have a different, our learning management system is based off of Blackbaud, but I ended up using Google Classroom just because it does all the heavy lifting as far as sharing out like individual assessments and things to students. And so it's not as well versed as a system like Canvas is, where you're actually using it to do online, and you know, Canvas is much better at, like, actually for an online course and doing online instruction with content that's based on that. But what I was doing was using a lot of the modeling materials and things that I have, putting them into a Jamboard, and then being able to share individual Jamboards out to students using Google Classroom with like a turn-in date and that sort of thing. That worked really well for me because Google then creates all the individual, if you're using Google Suites for education and all your students have those Gmail accounts, it was creating all the shared folders and stuff instead of me trying to manually go and do that. The other thing that I liked about it is I could go in real time and, like, let's say we're having a test or a quiz that I had set up in a Jamboard that I'd shared. It had Google Classroom distribute to individual students. I could, while they were taking that assessment, I could go in and watch them filling out the assessment in real time and maybe contact the student and say, hey, have you thought about problem number 5? You know, what's your thinking there? Or did you make sure you read all the instructions on number 8? It was actually a much more fulfilling assessment piece for me because I could see which students were struggling with what concepts in real time, since that's all shared via Google Drive. So that's my 2 cents.
I used Google Drive because we're a Google school, and it was great for like one-on-one conversations with kids because you would chat. The funniest thing is that I always found funny was when I was in grading a student's paper or working on a student's paper, they'd pop in and start talking to me, and I'd be like, stop talking to me, I'm grading your work. But it was a nice interact. One awesome thing about it is I made each and every one of them have their parents also sign up for it. And so when they started slacking behind, I could send a what you owe me and how late it is, and also copy their parents on it so that you don't get the syndrome of, oh, my Jimmy is wonderful. He's working so much. Why is he getting a 2? And I'm like, well, he's really not, because this is how much time he spent on his work. And one thing I want to ask you guys is, did any of you, our district decided to use some online class software, and my physics students hated it. Like, they did it for 2 weeks and said, Miss England, could you just go back to teaching even if you have to, you know, they hated it. We did Edgenuity. They just despised it. And they and some of them would refuse to do it. It's like, I'm not doing it. I'll flunk the class. I'm like, no, you won't. But so.
I just want to add to the Google Classroom piece. There's a lot of the new visions for education folks or for public schools folks have a lot of like add-ons to the Google stuff. So like Doctopus Rubric. So if you're using Google Classroom and you have that, and if you have a rubric that you're scoring things off of, you can use Rubric to like score on that rubric, and you can click that as you're going through and looking at it. That's been really great, and you can give audio feedback as well as comments on like a Google Doc. So that's been pretty interesting. I have some issues with scoring in Google Classroom and like some other issues with Google Classroom, but there's a bunch of stuff that's really great. And I found with emails, using like Formule or like a mail merge thing so that I can send the same email to all of the students, but actually put their first name in the subject line, popped my response rate to stuff. Really, like, it's just a form thing, and I'm just, instead of just being like, you know, I was just like literally their name with whatever the rest of the subject was, and they would actually look at that more, like kids that ignored everything else. I wish I'd figured that out at the beginning of the remote period.
How do you do that? And then how do you make audio notes? I'm interested in both of those things. How do you put the subject, their name in the subject?
So if you look at, Formule is an add-on for a Google Sheet. So if you have their names in a Google Sheet with their addresses, I also used it to send out final grades, because I was getting an email every day from at least half of my students, like what did I get? How, you know, because CPS changed how the whole grading thing worked, and there was a lot of confusion. So I said, you know what, I had to run this report anyway, so I pulled that. And Formula work, it's really simple. So like when you open Google Sheets, add it as an add-on, and you'll be able to see, but basically every header for your column is a field that you can call, and you use the double-ended carets. So you use 2 carets on one side and the 2 carets on the other side to close it. But it's clickable. It's really like, check it out. If you need to, I can help you with that too. If you need, I'm putting my email in the chat. But I'm happy to help people with that. And as far as like audio, it's built into Kubrick. Like you can leave an audio message or something. I actually don't remember it. It's been a while since I've used that, used the audio feature, but there's a way to like do that. I don't know if Google Classroom allows for that.
I have one more question, maybe for the host, because with all these like buzzwords that I'm hearing, or what, it's just a lot to take in. Is there a way that we could have a spreadsheet with people's emails, so that if I go, oh, this person knows about Flipgrid, they have put it in the chat, and then I can talk to them later and go, can you talk to me more about Flipgrid?
Love that
If I
idea.
could-
Janelle, you're like so full of great ideas. I love it.
I just wanted to say something because Google Classroom is being thrown around a lot. And I have to say that I don't know if this is true, but in the course that I'm teaching now, it was pointed out that Google Classroom is apparently not going to be free anymore. I don't know that, and I don't know how much it would be, but apparently that might not, it's possible that it won't be free anymore, and I don't know when that starts either. Somebody on this conversation might know, because some of the people in that class are here.
Can I throw out one more question just for the last whatever 6 or however many minutes there is left? I was in a completely asynchronous school, and I imagine that there'll be some sort of hybrid model in the future. And so I guess I'm curious what folks who've done both like sort of like that like macro structure of weaving synchronous and asynchronous together. Like, could anyone speak to some pro tips? Like, what's the best way to use synchronous time, and what do we push to asynchronous? Just love to hear someone talk to that.
I
So
think if
we were totally asynchronous this spring, and I've just been having some conversations with my department about what that hybrid model might look like for us. Kind of what we're thinking is design the course as if it's asynchronous, but then if we have face-to-face time, use that to have some discussion, get kids asking questions, get kids sharing their work, and do some of those things that are just really hard to pull into the online environment asynchronously. But yeah, still have them working on labs synchronously, still have them doing problems asynchronously.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're planning, is to just have a fully online curriculum. Like that's what my team's been working on. Like everything's online, everything's in like our Google Slides, which we're going to move to ClassKick. And if we happen to get to see them face to face once a week, then we will talk about stuff. We'll build relationships. We may give an assessment. We may have a discussion. But pretty much it's all like it's online, because I think at any second we're back to online anyway. Like, and we're just going to try to plan by the week, right? Because we might see the kids, like these kids I see Monday, these kids I see Wednesday. So I can't plan a face-to-face lesson. It's just all online. And then whatever day they happen to show up, we just happen to help them kind of with whatever for the week, because otherwise it's just going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, that's what we've pushed for all of our teachers as well. Outside of the modeling community, even is, and I hate to say it, but I've told them plan for 100% online, because it's much easier to go from online to the real world than to go back, as we saw this last couple of months. Yeah, that's not a fun thing to say, but I think it's probably for us the most realistic way to plan, and then not be stressed out about it.
I just had an idea of how we can do this email thing. If you go to the participant notes and just write a note about, say, hey, this worked for me, Flipgrid worked for me, contact me if you have more questions, put a little summary of what actually worked for you. And then maybe in the participant notes, there can be a place for questions, and you can say, still after this session, I have questions of here's my email, please contact me if you have any ideas. And maybe we can keep this discussion going through the participant notes.
Now, another option, I just made a Google Sheet that I shared in the chat that people can put their name, email, and then like a specialty if they want someone to contact them with. A few people are putting their stuff in there.
And that link is now in the notes at the top, at the very top of the page. You can go to that link. So even after today, you could go to that link and find it and add your name or anything else you want to do.
And someone was a quicker typer than I was because I was doing the same thing.
It's 2 minutes too, but then yeah, and trying to figure out, this is why we don't make graphs where you label the gaps with the number, you label the line with the number, so you know when the time goes with the particular line in the grid. So I do think we have till 2:15. I don't know if you're able to, stomach that much. So if you need to leave us before 2:15, feel free to do that, or feel free to just spend a little time typing and putting some of this in. But I will still certainly be around here to 2:15 to keep this going.
I have a question. Perhaps we could refer to things as quarter after.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Sorry. Yes, thank you.
That's okay. That's okay.
I saw a question in the chat that I'd love to talk about more that somebody posted. The thing I'm concerned about is building community. I mean, I already had built that community last year, and then we went into online learning. So I already had that, and so I had pretty good discussions in Google Classroom and was able to keep some amount of, but how in the world are we going to build community asynchronously? I think I know how to do it synchronously, but feel free to talk about that as well, but especially async, which I'm probably in that position because my county has very, very poor internet.
I was actually in that situation this spring. I was teaching the second half of a certain chemistry course, and it started at the same time as we switched to distance learning. So it was a bunch of kids I'd never met. They had not necessarily been in a class together. The first week I made entirely about community building. So we were completely closed for 2 weeks. So I had a discussion board where I asked kids, share something about what you've been up to these last 2 weeks. I used a Flipgrid where kids did short video introductions, and I had them do some responding to each other. I think one of the most useful things I did is I used Google Calendar to just set up appointment slots for the whole trimester. And I had my chem kids each use that calendar to make an appointment with me. And then we did a real-time video chat. I used a survey that they'd done prior to that video chat to just make some notes about, okay, this kid plays such and such sport, I should ask them about that. Or this kid is really into this kind of music, here's some things I should ask them about. So it was just the getting to know you small talk. But at the same time, it got kids comfortable doing the video chat. It taught them how to set up a one-on-one appointment with me that then they could do throughout the trimester. I needed to do a much better job with getting the kids responding to each other in that first week to then really start building that whole class community. But that worked pretty well to get the kids some connection with me.
Marta, can I ask you, how long were those sessions with your individual students?
They were 10 minutes or less. And it was only one section, and it was a pretty small section since it's a really high percentage of kids who qualify for IEPs. So you know, I was only doing it with about 20 kids. If I was going to do it with all 150 kids on my schedule in a typical year, I think I'm thinking if we have to start online, maybe I'll do sessions with like 5 kids at a time instead of doing them all one-on-one.
Something else I'd like to share is, I don't know how this will look, but I spent like the 2 days putting together take-home experiments for my kids. And I haven't really thought this through, but I thought like for maybe my physics class, if they did pick up their materials, maybe I could give like 6 students a constant buggy, right? And they can be like in a team, like they can have that equipment since I don't have 30 or 60 of them. But I could at least make sure that like some, you know, and I could think to myself what labs I want them to do and somehow have them take home, some of them take home the materials, so there could be different people kind of leading labs. So maybe they could do them kind of together in a group and collect data.
Just because I want to just draw attention to it, in the contact info and specialties spreadsheet, I created a column that says interest in joint summer planning. If you just put a Y in it, I can filter, like you can put other things that you're interested in, but put a Y, just the letter Y, and I can filter for the Y. You can leave it blank if you're not interested, and I can use Formule to email everybody automatically, and I can put that together for people that are interested in maybe breaking out, building videos, and building other things for us to use, because there's a lot of stuff that I feel like can take a lot of time, whereas if we can, you know, many hands make light work. So you just put a Y in there.
Where do we put that in? I don't know where the link is anymore.
If you go in the Google Doc for the, it was added, and it's towards the top underneath participant notes. It says contact info and specialties spreadsheet. And then
Eileen just put it back in.
Oh, okay.
The chat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So if you just put a Y in there, I will follow up and send an email, and I can sort of try to help work. I can try to get us organized and figure out what people might be interested in doing and what people want and that kind of thing. Because there's a lot of really great ideas, and I don't want to have to build them all myself for my class, you know?
Janelle?
And also, I know we mostly put tech tools in there, but if anybody else is teaching AP, if you want to put that in there too, it'd be nice to try to connect with AP too.
Janelle, what I did was I had on Friday the 13th, to be exact, I made kits, a whole bunch of kits that I left outside the school building in a box. And I told kids that that we were going to be still doing hands-on labs while they were gone. And I put 4 different kits in there, and I said, and I really hope you return them because it's going to be an expensive year next year. Luckily, we got some funding to replace some of the things, but most of it is stuff that if they kept it, the world didn't end. And I put string, and they got meter sticks, and so it was like a kit and caboodle so that I could run a lab and know that, oh, okay, I know you have this because I gave it to you. And it was because they're high school students and most of them are junior seniors. It was their responsibility to get the lab. And if they didn't do it, percent back, I had 4 kids sent them to, they're like, Miss England, can we send them to you at home because the school closed the email? So I have a whole bunch of students who know my address, and a bunch of them sent here, and then a group of them have a box to give me at graduation because we're going to do an in-person graduation the beginning of July, and I promised my physics kids I would go. I said, even if I have to quarantine myself for 15 days afterwards, I will go and see you graduate. But it was great because I could say, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a question because I only taught physics for 2 years. I did modeling chemistry a lot longer. So I know how to do these labs with veneer probes, but I almost need a list of labs with non-veneer equipment at this point so that I could have them do take-home experiments easier, because I can't send home my Apple computers and my veneer equipment, but I'm not knowledgeable enough in physics to know how they, like, for instance, like the acceleration lab or momentum with them hitting each other, or I mean, I think you could do springs, but the energy, driving energy equations, just to name a few. I don't know if there's a resource out there of, hey, this is an option besides veneer.
Are you familiar with apps? Yeah, there's an entire, it's called Physics Toolkit, and it's a phone app, and it has like almost every app you could think of for all sorts of experiments that you can do. Yeah, it's called Physics Toolbox, and it's got stuff for sound, and I can't even think of it. It's got an accelerometer in it, because your phone is this amazing little app that has almost everything that Vernier could have. Not everything, but a lot.
But Janelle, I also did low tech. I got them to get cans and do momentum and impulse with cans in their driveway. And
yeah, that's what I need. I would really love, I know there's like online virtual labs, and that will definitely be helpful, but the more that I can get their hands on stuff, the happier I'll be. And I don't have the knowledge of the low tech stuff at this point.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really
Could you
good low
share?
tech. Sure. Send me an email and say, so what are some of the things you
low
did?
tech stuff?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Where's your email, Elizabeth?
It is elizabethteachesscience@gmail.com.
Oh, I found it.
Should I add that column in the spreadsheet of low-tech stuff?
Sure.
And then people that are interested in that, we can pull that way.
And Janelle, if you really want your students to really engage with you, do the lab in person in your driveway and not be able to have a single can hit each other. I spent a good 15 minutes them laughing, telling me how to redirect it, and I couldn't get them. And finally at the end of it, I'm like, okay, I did it, so now you guys go do it. But they had to figure out how they were going to calculate impulse. They had to think a little more about how they were going to demonstrate the transfer of energy, how they were, what was their driveway at an angle? If it wasn't, how would they do it? Because it had to be from a standstill going forward. But they had a blast. We also did physics of a snowman because we had a blizzard one day, and they said, "Oh, we have a snow day," and I said, "No, we don't. You're here still." So.
I had a quick share I posted in the chat. Just because we're all science teachers, there's a COVID reporting daily. It's just helping to collect a lot of data, and it's legit. And I do it every day, and it takes 30 seconds. So help collect COVID data.
That also doubles as a plug for tomorrow's keynote speaker. We thought in this environment, it'd be interesting to hear about somebody who does modeling for a living, and it's modeling pandemics and the spread of disease. And so that's going to be our speaker tomorrow. And so I encourage you to tune in for that, because that should be a nice way of seeing how models work in the real world. I'm trying to find something in my email and I can't. At one point, a month ago or so, our department chair just said, what would you need for running next semester online? And I broke it down into a bunch of categories about the kinds of things I'd like the kids to have at home, the kinds of tools that I'd like to have. Additionally, if we're doing some kind of blended where some of us are at school, and I can't find that, but that could be a useful way of prompting people's thinking about it if you end up going to some kind of blended mode in the fall. So if I find that, I will stick that in the Google Doc.
My head is swimming right now with the amount of information that's been dumped in here in the last 2 hours. Like, I'm numb right now.
I would add Moodle is a great, whatever we call it, online learning school system that if your school doesn't use it, I've been exploring. One person from an email list said, yeah, they'd like to do it. But if your school allows you to do sites off-site, it would be great to have a Moodle-based modeling educators site where we could share resources there as we make them. So if you're interested in that, email me, lee@trampleasure.net. Just my first name at last name.net. I would also say a lot of people in various places have said, this is a real challenge to how we learn. And the whole idea of grades and cheating and all that, we still have high school teenagers in America. So we're not going to make perfect learners out of them. But I think to some degree, working as much as we can to get students thinking about the authentic learning that we want them to have, and how traditional tests and perhaps independent tests aren't really that good at that. We've done that because that's what they're used to, but now maybe we have to do things a little different.
Hey, Lee, can you just type your email in the group chat if you don't mind?
I really appreciate Lee's comment there. I mean, we've got all these tech tools, and my spouse was actually at a school that said, try them all, use something new every week, keep it new and different. And it's like, oh my God, you do that to your poor kids and they are screwed. What you're trying to do is you're trying to find the tech tools that makes the online learning experience as close to the ideal in-class learning experience as you can. And as much as you can hold over the routines and the processes and the approaches that you did in face-to-face and make those happen online, that's what's, I think, is what really helps the kids to make a transition to this environment where they understand, oh, we're going to have to work together in groups in order to work this out. We're going to need to communicate with one another. We're going to have to think about these things in practice. We might not get them the first time, so we might have to go and relearn, repractice these things. And if we provide the opportunity for that, that would be great. Okay. I'm wondering what would happen if, as we finish up here, if I'd copy the chat and put the chat into the Google Doc. Would that make sense? Holly, have you gotten a sense of that?
I already got that for you, Bark. It's all set. Just don't close before I get a chance to do that.
Okay, so that'll be, I think, easier for everybody.
And that will be available as a text file in the folder for this session. So
okay.
So will the notes that are there. So will the and you can go back and edit and add and do whatever you want. So that spreadsheet that Dan made, all that stuff will be there. And that's true for every session. So I got a communication from somebody that they can't make one of the other sessions and they're worried about missing it. These folders are here and you can get into the folder from your conference schedule. And so after a session is over, you can certainly go there. And my understanding is the recordings. So for instance, these, we didn't break out into rooms here. So this was all recorded and that recording will be in that folder also. So if you know somebody who wanted to be here and couldn't, or if you want to rehear something, that will be available to you. And I guess just before I turn this back over to Mark, I just want to say thanks. It was a long session, but wow, I learned a lot and it was really nice to see so many people here. Thank you.
I'm not sure why you're turning it over to me. That was a perfect closure, Holly. That was lovely. Okay. We will see you at other sessions around or hanging out in the virtual lobby just to chat. It's good to see you and I hope to see you around the Zoom, around Twitter, around the listserv, all of those different things as we keep on working out, figuring out how to make modeling evolve to familiar and unfamiliar circumstances. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Mark, I got it, so you can close anytime you want now. Thank you.
Okay, all right. I found that email that I was looking for. I'm gonna put it in actually as a separate document in that folder. Whoa, I lost your sound, Holly. What happened? Oh, hi, Tanea.
Hi. You guys had a long session.
You joined in with the physics.
Well, I didn't. I thought it was the next session going to start.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were looking at, how the times line up with things. And yeah, I think that the breaks technically starts at 2:15.
It's difficult to tell.
Yeah. So we were just trying to work through that.
I looked at the start at 9 o'clock as the example, and so it looks like it's the time at the top of the time applies to the top of the row.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a challenge there. All right. Okay, well, we will send everybody else out. You've copied that, and oh, this may still actually run in the background with, well, actually, no, if I'm whatever.
I think it's going to run in the background on Colleen's computer because she's the one recording, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think you can, well, actually, I'm not sure if we can end it if Tanea's here. Maybe we just leave and leave it going, but I don't know.
Oh, no, don't worry. I'll just come back in later. Don't worry.
Can you transfer host? Well, actually, it might help Colleen out if we transfer host to
me?
Tanea.
Yeah, why don't you transfer host to Tanea? Here, I'm here. I'm
awesome. I'm going to go.
Transfer host to Tanea.
Thank you. Nice job, Mark.
Thanks.
Okay,
Holly.
and then Colleen, who do I make hosts when they come in?
You can close the meeting. We're supposed to close and reopen these meetings, but since we are closing this one late at the time that we're supposed to be reopening it, we'll just leave it open.
Colleen, if that's the case, we need to fix the spreadsheet because the spreadsheet is not clear. I mean, it looks to me, the way that it's set up, that there's supposed to be a
15-minute break, right?
It is a 15-minute break. So it's like from 11:15 to 11:30 is a break, but then they told us to open our rooms 10 minutes early.
Oh, I see.
Oh, yes, I'll just stay here. That's fine.
That's the problem. I mean, you know, that's the problem is that they wanted, I think what they wanted was separate recordings. And
yeah,
I'll stop recording and hit restart then.
Well, the other thing is you've got all the stuff that's in the chat,